Every journey begins with awareness. Before discipline, before consistency, before profitability, there must be honest self-awareness, not motivation, not strategy, not another indicator. Awareness. Most traders enter the market believing the enemy is external. They point to volatility. They blame manipulation. They blame news, brokers, algorithms, institutions, or bad luck. When trades fail, the instinct is always the same. Something out there caused this. The market moved too fast. The stop loss was hunted. The news was unexpected. The setup failed. But the truth is quieter and far more uncomfortable. The real battle is not with the market. The real battle is internal. Phase 1 is where trading stops being about charts and starts being about you. This is the phase where you learn to see yourself clearly as a trader, without excuses, without judgment, and without illusion. No stories, no justification, just reality. You begin to understand a hard truth that most traders avoid for years. The market does not cause your mistakes. It only exposes them. The market is neutral. It does not care about your goals. It does not know your account size. It does not feel your fear. It simply applies pressure, and pressure reveals patterns. Fear does not appear randomly. Greed does not come from nowhere. Impatience is not accidental. They are reactions. Learned emotional responses triggered under pressure. The market doesn't create these reactions. It reveals them. Every trading day is a mirror, and most people don't like what they see. In phase 1, you begin to notice something unsettling. Two traders can use the same strategy, the same entry, the same stop loss, the same target, yet one walks away calm, focused, and consistent, while the other spirals into hesitation, revenge trading, or early exits. Same chart, same setup, completely different outcomes. The difference is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not experience. The difference is emotional awareness. One trader understands what they feel and why they feel it. The other reacts automatically, without understanding, not as panic, but as hesitation, not as weakness, but as overanalysis. Fear of loss makes you close trades too early. Fear of missing out pushes you into bad entries. Fear of being wrong keeps you trapped in losing positions far too long. Fear doesn't scream. It whispers. It sounds logical. It feels protective. And that's why it's dangerous. You also learn how greed disguises itself. Greed rarely looks reckless at first. It looks like confidence. It looks like certainty. It looks like I've got this figured out. It whispers, just one more trade. It convinces you that rules are flexible. Just this once. Impatience pretends to be opportunity. Overconfidence pretends to be mastery. Excitement pretends to be intuition. And slowly, silently, discipline erodes, not in one big mistake, but in small compromises. Phase 1 teaches you to recognize these disguises, not to fight them, not to suppress them, but to see them, because awareness always comes before control. Most traders spend years trying to eliminate emotions. They tell themselves to be emotive, to be cold, to be robotic. Professionals do something very different. They observe. They accept that emotions are part of decision-making, and they train awareness instead of denial. In this phase, you stop judging yourself for feeling fear or greed. You stop calling yourself weak, stupid, or undisciplined. You stop turning trading into a personal attack on your identity. Instead, you become a witness. You begin tracking your thoughts before trades. Your emotions during trades. Your impulses after trades, not to criticize them, but to understand their patterns. You notice when fear tightens your chest. When excitement speeds up your decisions. When frustration pushes you to win it back. You start to see repetition. Same emotion, same reaction, same outcome, again and again. And slowly, something powerful happens. Emotions lose their grip. The moment they are recognized, you realize you don't have to act on every feeling. You don't have to obey every impulse. You don't have to believe every thought that shows up under pressure. You create space. And in that space, choice appears, because you cannot control what you do not recognize. Phase 1 is not about changing behavior. Yet it is about seeing behavior clearly. This is where randomness begins to disappear. Trading stops feeling chaotic. Losses stop feeling personal. Wins stop feeling intoxicating. You stop swinging between euphoria and despair. You begin to understand yourself, the same way the market understands you, through repetition and reaction. Phase 1 is where trading becomes intentional, where you stop asking, "Why is the market doing this to me?" and start asking, "Why am I reacting this way?" This is the foundation. Without it, discipline collapses. Without it, consistency never lasts. Without it, profitability remains temporary. But with awareness, you gain leverage over yourself. And once you understand the trader behind the trades, everything else becomes possible. Knowledge without discipline is useless. You can study the charts for years. You can understand every setup. You can explain risk management better than most, and still fail. Phase 2 is where theory meets reality. This is where most traders break, not because they don't know what to do, but because they can't do it when emotions rise. On paper, trading is simple. Follow the plan, respect risk, wait for confirmation. But the market is not a classroom. It is a pressure environment, and pressure changes behavior. In this phase, you learn why rules are easiest to follow when you don't need them, and hardest to follow when you do. When the market is calm, discipline feels natural, patience feels easy, losses feel manageable. But when money is on the line, when a loss hits unexpectedly, when confidence spikes after a win, everything changes. Losses trigger impulsive behavior. The mind wants relief. It wants balance. It wants to undo discomfort immediately. Winning streaks trigger ego. Confidence quietly shifts into certainty. Certainty expands risk, and rules begin to feel optional. Urgency clouds judgment. Suddenly waiting feels dangerous. Doing nothing feels like missing out, and action feels necessary, even without clarity. Phase 2 teaches you why revenge trading feels logical in the moment and destructive afterward. A loss creates emotional imbalance. The instinct is to correct it quickly. The brain tells you speed equals control, but speed removes precision. This is how one loss turns into 5. How a single mistake becomes a cascade. How overtrading feels productive, but isn't. Activity replaces accuracy. Motion replaces intention. Phase 2 reveals the difference between amateurs and professionals. Amateurs react emotionally. Professionals respond structurally. After a loss, amateurs speed up. Professionals slow down. Amateurs increase position size to recover. Professionals reduce exposure to protect clarity. Amateurs chase the next trade. Professionals step back and reassess. They understand something critical. Capital is not just money. Capital is focus. Capital is patience. Capital is emotional stability. Once mindset is compromised, no strategy can save the account. Phase 2 teaches you how professionals protect both. They reduce activity instead of increasing it. They accept short-term discomfort to avoid long-term damage. They prioritize survival over excitement because consistency is built on preservation. In this phase, discipline becomes practical, not theoretical. You learn impulse control, how to pause before clicking the button, how to insert space between feeling and action, how to let emotion exist without obeying it. You train emotional regulation, not by suppressing emotions, but by recognizing them without reaction. You learn decision delays, simple rules that force time into execution. Time cools emotion. Time restores objectivity. You learn patience training, not passive waiting, but deliberate restraint. You begin to understand something essential. Discipline is not motivation. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is conditioned. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline is built through repetition. Discipline is trained behavior. Every time you follow your plan, when it feels uncomfortable, you reinforce discipline. Every time you accept a loss, without forcing a response, you strengthen control. Every time you step away, instead of chasing the market, you build resilience. Discipline is not proven on good days. It is forged on bad ones. Phase 2 teaches you that discipline is not about perfection. It is about consistency under pressure. You stop waiting to feel confident before acting. You act correctly, despite how you feel. You stop reacting to the market and start responding with intention. This is the turning point, where execution replaces emotion, where structure replaces impulse, where choice replaces reaction. Phase 2 is where you stop reacting and start choosing, and once you can choose under pressure, consistency becomes possible. Phase 3 changes how you see the market. This is where fear transforms into structure, not because fear disappears, but because it no longer controls you. Most traders feel risk. They sense it in every trade. They react to it in every candle, but they don't define it. And undefined risk creates emotional attachments. When risk is vague, everything feels important. Every candle feels personal. Every pullback feels dangerous. Every decision feels heavy. The market stops being information and starts feeling like judgment. Phase 3 teaches you that fear thrives in ambiguity. The mind fills in gaps with worst-case scenarios. Imagination replaces probability. Emotion replaces logic. This is why structure matters. In this phase, you learn the psychology of risk management, not as numbers on a calculator, but as a framework for mental clarity. You begin to understand why position sizing is not just mathematical, it's psychological. When risk is too large, the mind cannot stay objective. You watch the chart instead of the plan. You manage the trade instead of the risk. You feel every tick. But when risk is controlled, something shifts. Smaller, defined risk creates space. It allows patience. It allows observation. It allows clarity. You stop trying to control outcomes and start controlling exposure. This is where confidence becomes grounded, not emotional confidence, structural confidence. Phase 3 also reframes stop-loss discipline, not as a technical rule, not as a limitation, but as a psychological agreement with yourself, a promise that no single trade will define you, a boundary that protects your identity from the randomness of outcomes. You learn that a stop-loss is not an admission of failure. It is a declaration of self-respect. It says, "This trade has limits, and so does its influence on me." Once risk is defined, losses lose their power. They become data, not verdicts. You stop fighting the market and start working within its uncertainty. Phase 3 also exposes the subtle pull of herd mentality. You learn why following the crowd feels safe, because responsibility dissolves in numbers, because uncertainty feels lighter when shared, because if everyone is wrong, no one feels alone. But safety is an illusion. Herd behavior trades clarity for comfort. It replaces thinking with imitation, conviction with consensus, and slowly, independent judgment disappears. Phase 3 trains you to recognize this pull. You learn to pause when everyone agrees, to question certainty that feels too easy, to separate signal from noise. You stop borrowing confidence from the crowd. You build your own. This phase trains calm decision-making, not hesitation, not paralysis. Calm. You learn how to act without urgency and wait without anxiety. You learn that patience is not passive. It is active restraint, a choice, not a delay. You begin to accept uncertainty without trying to eliminate it, because the market will never offer certainty, only probabilities, and probabilities demand structure. Here, uncertainty becomes manageable. You stop asking the market for reassurance. You stop needing constant confirmation. Your decisions become quieter. Your execution becomes cleaner. Your reactions become slower, in the best way. And something important happens. Fear stops being a warning signal and becomes a reference point. It tells you where structure is missing. It tells you where risk is undefined. Instead of running from fear, you use it to refine your process. Phase 3 is where confidence becomes earned, not forced, not imagined. Earned through repetition, earned through boundaries, earned through consistency in risk. You no longer trade to feel confident. You feel confident because your structure holds. This is where the market stops feeling threatening, not because it changed, but because you did. And from here, every decision becomes clearer, because fear has been given a framework, and within that framework, you are in control. Phase 4 is where traders are tested, because markets don't just challenge strategy, they challenge identity. They challenge how you see yourself. They challenge what you believe you deserve. They challenge the stories you tell about success and failure. Winning streaks test ego. They create confidence, and then quietly inflate it. Rules begin to feel unnecessary. Risk begins to feel smaller than it is. Discipline feels optional. Losing streaks test patience. Doubt creeps in. You question your edge. You question your ability. And volatility tests emotional stability. Rapid movement compresses time. Decisions feel urgent. Mistakes feel amplified. Phase 4 is where many traders fall, not because they lack skill, but because they become emotionally attached to outcomes. In this phase, you learn how professionals remain grounded during success and resilient during drawdowns. They understand that results are temporary. A win does not define them. A loss does not expose them. They detach identity from outcome. This phase teaches you how to separate who you are from what just happened. You learn how to detach from individual trade results, not by becoming indifferent, but by becoming objective. You stop asking, was this trade a win or a loss? And start asking, was this trade executed correctly? Because execution is within your control. Outcome is not. Here, the focus shifts away from results and toward process. Results fluctuate. Process builds consistency. Process creates stability. In an unstable environment, Phase 4 teaches you that emotional volatility comes from measuring yourself by short-term outcomes. When profit defines your value, every trade becomes a referendum on your competence. This is exhausting and unsustainable. You learn to redefine success. Success becomes following your plan. Success becomes managing risk. Success becomes emotional control under pressure. Money becomes feedback, not validation. This phase introduces visualization techniques used by elite performers across high-pressure fields. Athletes, pilots, surgeons. You learn mental rehearsals that prepare discipline before pressure arrives. You visualize losses and your calm response. You visualize winning streaks and continued restraint. You mentally experience volatility without being overwhelmed by it. So when it happens in real time, your nervous system recognizes the environment and responds with familiarity instead of panic. Phase 4 also introduces emotional conditioning. You learn how to normalize losses. Losses stop feeling like threats. They become expected variables. You learn how to regulate stress responses. Breathing slows. Decision speed stabilizes. Attention returns to the process. You learn how to remain composed when volatility rises, not by forcing calm, but by training for chaos. This phase shows you that composure is not a personality trait. It is a trained response. Professionals don't avoid emotion. They anticipate it. They prepare for it. Phase 4 is where emotional maturity develops, where you stop swinging between euphoria and despair, where confidence becomes steady, not reactive, where discipline holds, regardless of recent outcomes. You no longer trade to prove something. You trade to execute something. This is where trading becomes quieter, less dramatic, less personal, and far more consistent. Phase 4 is where trading becomes less emotional and more intentional, where identity is no longer tied to the last trade, where resilience replaces reactivity, where pressure reveals professionalism, not panic. And from here, the trader you are begins to match the results you want. This is where trading stops feeling reactive and starts becoming deliberate. This is where you stop responding to the market and start operating within it. Up to this point, trading has been about learning, controlling, structuring, and stabilizing. Phase 5 is about integration. Everything you've trained now becomes a system. Here, trading is no longer a series of decisions. It becomes a performance framework, a repeatable process that functions, regardless of emotion, volatility, or recent outcomes. At this level, professionals stop relying on willpower. They rely on routines, because discipline that depends on motivation will eventually fail. Phase 5 teaches you professional routines that remove randomness from behavior. You begin with pre-market mental preparation, not analysis, not prediction, preparation. You enter the market already aligned. You check emotional state before checking charts. You define acceptable risk before seeking opportunity. You set intention before exposure, because the market doesn't just test your strategy, it tests your state of mind. This is why every video on mind over markets exists, for one reason: to give you a mental edge Because your strategy does not execute itself. Your emotions do not manage risk. Your discipline does not appear under pressure by accident. It is trained. It is practiced. It is earned. Here, your mind is your market. And mastery begins within. Phase 5 also introduces post-market execution review, not performance review. Execution review. You analyze decisions without ego. You evaluate behavior without emotion. You separate outcome from process. A winning trade executed poorly is still a failure. A losing trade executed correctly is still success. This phase trains honesty. You stop protecting your self-image and start protecting your edge. Mistakes are no longer painful. They are instructional. You study them calmly. You extract patterns. You refine responses. This is where growth accelerates. Phase 5 also introduces emotional performance tracking, not journaling feelings. Tracking behavior under pressure. You observe how emotions repeat, how stress shows up, how confidence shifts. You begin to see cycles. Certain emotions appear after certain events. Certain mistakes follow certain states. Over time, these patterns become predictable, and predictable behavior becomes manageable behavior. Month after month, you refine. You don't try to change everything at once. You adjust one response, one habit, one decision point. This is how professionals evolve. Consistency becomes the goal, not excitement. Process becomes the focus, not prediction. You stop asking, "What will the market do today?" and start asking, "How will I execute today?" At this level, trading becomes quieter, calmer, slower, more controlled. You no longer seek adrenaline. You seek repeatability. You no longer chase opportunity. You wait for alignment. You no longer react to volatility. You operate within it. Phase 5 is where discipline becomes identity. You are no longer trying to be disciplined. You are disciplined, not because you force it, but because it is who you are in the market. Your routines protect you. Your structure guides you. Your mindset stabilizes you. This is not emotional detachment. This is emotional mastery. And from here, trading is no longer something you do. It is something you embody. Phase 5 is not the end. It is the point where everything finally works together, where the trader you've trained and the results you seek begin to align. This is transformation, and this is where professionals are made.